Welcome to this EDUcast, IT Best Practice in Unified Communications, sponsored by Versailles and Telecom Reseller. This is Gary Auden, and with me today is Ross Williams, Chief Operations Officer at Versailles. Our agenda today is talking about unified communications from a service management perspective. And service management is probably the most important thing you got to worry about because that's what the users are seeing. So we're going to talk about service management, voice quality, measurements and statistics, service management in action. Then we're going to get to two interesting words, proactive and reactive, talking about managing the network and its resources, a real-world example, and discussing things such as simply UC health and the benefits of delivering a healthy UC environment. So Ross, let's start off with the first page here. The screen that we have in front of us has the word challenges in front of it. Would you tell us what the challenges are?
Yeah, Gary. Well, I guess this is something that a lot of people will be able to relate to. I call this the UC circle of death, and it's a very common situation amongst IT teams. And basically, you've got there at the top that your consumers, your end users may be complaining of quality issues, and that may be anything from garbled speech or one-way speech to the way that their external customers are treated in the call center. They're not getting the right treatment. Agents aren't getting calls correctly, and the contact center is becoming inefficient. That can manifest itself in many different ways. The voice team look into the problem and can't find anything on their side, and they defer the problem to the network team. Network team look at their side, same thing. They think it's the application that's playing up because the network's been fine. An impasse is reached, and we're back at the top of the circle again. And really, it leads to ongoing quality issues. Their problems don't get resolved, and ultimately, your brand gets damaged because of that.
Let's talk about ITIL. That's the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. It has many elements. Let's focus on one of them. Talk about service management.
Well, that first one, Gary, which is really key, ITIL is really good at aligning the services that IT provide with the needs of the business. Really understanding, and you touched on it very early on in the presentation, aligning the IT services with the expectations of the business and what they need to get out of it, and it's really key, at the top level. How it works underneath the covers, ITIL processes, and there's a bunch of them, and they all interwork, and it provides you with a clear end-to-end view of what's going on within your environment. It ultimately maximizes your uptime and provides you a good high quality customer experience for both your internal and your external customers.
Our next slide has a good title, the IT Best Practice in Unified Communications. Focusing on service management, would you talk about some of the best practices to follow in managing a unified communication service?
Right. Well, as I said, ITIL really lends itself well to unified communications. And it, as a byproduct almost, it can bring disparate IT groups together. So often you end up with a divide amongst your team where the voice people kind of speak a different language to the data networking people, and they talk a different language to the server people, for example. So what ITIL does is it standardizes processes and reporting across all of those groups. Everyone starts talking the same language, which was a major problem, particularly with voice guys coming into the IT realm. And ultimately that enhances teamwork and it builds a better, more capable team. And the team not only improve their own skills and their own ability to deliver services, but as a natural consequence, the team also develop crossover skills. So the data guys understand really well the environment that the voice guys need, or the voice application needs to work, and vice versa. So it really does bring things together and into a single cohesive group.
How does unified communication service management actually work?
The cornerstones really are having access to huge amounts of information. And a lot of these voice platforms have significant capabilities when it comes to creating log files to providing that visibility. But of course, you've got to have a means of picking all that up, storing it, dealing with it, analysing it, and so forth. And really, you need a service management application that's big on automation. Can handle big data and big data analytics. And increasingly, AI, artificial intelligence, is stepping in and automating the heavy lifting, I guess, in behind doing a lot of the data analysis of all of these logs and so forth. And then ultimately, of course, converting all of that data to knowledge. It's fine to have data, that's one thing, but being able to translate that into real value is another.
When I looked at this slide, I was very interested in the voice quality measurement statistics on this slide. And these are, I believe, statistics you've collected. Would you review some of them for us?
Yeah, sure. This is a real-world data based on just 1 month's worth of processing out of the Versailles service management platform. So the data is, in fact, from November last year. So it goes to scale, and it gives you an idea of the type of and the size of the information that we deal with, and therefore, our ability across all of that data that's being fed in from many different sources to be able to do, some real analytics and build an AI engine that's really targeted and very, very precise when it comes to UC. So in the month of November, we analysed 357 million calls, and growing. That figure creeps up every time I talk about it. The upshot is that 99% of those calls were very good. So in terms of call quality, and that's the audio quality in this case, of both parties being able to hear each other and have a good conversation, which is a pretty good score. I should note here though that this is a mixture of both existing VSM customers and new ones, so that the figures are kind of skewed a little bit towards the good. So customers, typically their voice quality isn't this good when they join us, and in fact it ends up a little bit better than this after they have been on board for a while and sorted out their issues. So of those 357 million calls, around about 3% had a experience that wasn't so good, so fell into the satisfactory or poor regions.
In the next slide, you talk about service management in action. I see terms like big data engine and artificial intelligence. Would you focus on those?
Yeah, well, this is the way we handle it from a service management perspective inside the VSM engine. So you can see there, we're dealing with hundreds of millions of calls on a monthly basis, using our analytics engine and the ability to look for patterns across all of that information, because of course, being cloud-based, all our customers' data is being fed into the same engine. So events and incidents that happen, across the globe, we get to see. Our AI engine gets to apply itself to that, and we effectively learn from this huge base of customers and the billions of UC transactions that we pick up every month. And we get better and better at applying that in the real world and applying that in action. So you can see there we typically, auto remediate around 29 million events. As I say, that figure, those figures grow all of the time. We're looking at capacity management of almost 650,000 voice channels, over 50,000 contact center queues that are coming in. And from our configuration management side, we're at our peak, we create about 1,500 documents per second in that cloud environment, which is things like Visio diagrams that show how these UC environments fit together, and documents like that we create. So you can see, having that big engine in behind us and a large customer base that's feeding into all these billions of transactions, how we're able to learn from that and grow and just get better. Literally, every week we get better and better and better and more accurate and able to provide more value to our customers.
Let's talk about that. Let's go a little deeper. Now, this pyramid has 6 levels in it, and it really says there's a lot that can go on that can impair voice quality. Would you review those for us?
Yeah, so this is voice quality, and it is, as I say, it's just one element of what Versailles service management does. And I often refer to this diagram as the iceberg. A lot of our customers, or customers that are new to us, have been concentrating on the tip of the iceberg there, the white bit at the top, which is really the manual side, the investigation side that does require human input. And that's still there for us, but the point we like to make is, like an iceberg, typically below the water, what you don't see without a service management application is all of the other things that have to go together to provide that good voice quality experience. So right down to, starting at the very fundamental levels, what's your software, hardware, patch, firmware compatibility? Is that all intact, and is that as per the manufacturer's recommendations and so forth? So there's elements of release management, configuration management, capacity management in ITIL terms that all happen below the waterline that you really need to understand before you can start looking at that tip of the iceberg. And in our analysis of those hundreds of millions of calls, what Virsae has found is the vast majority of causes are in fact not network related, not above the waterline there, but are in fact to do with the rest of the configuration or release or capacity and so forth. So below the tip of the iceberg.
On this slide, we have the same pyramid, but you've added the words reactive and proactive. Would you differentiate between the two?
Right, so above the line there, reactive, that line, if you like, is the water line, the tip of the iceberg, what you can see, is where humans typically will operate. So that's sort of troubleshooting and manual searching through data and looking at call quality. And there's a number of players in that space that can provide tools that allow you to look at RTCP. What we're saying is below the waterline, as I've mentioned, that's where the vast majority of problems actually exist, and that stuff has to be right before you can even look at the stuff above the line. That requires automation, really. So that's why I've got a picture of a little bot there below that line, because these things are always changing, and in fact, there's a huge amount of data to pick up and analyze in behind those scenes there to make sure that the stuff that's below the waterline is actually correct. So that's where your digital employee starts to come in, I guess.
I like to see examples of how to manage a service. Would you provide some detail on this media gateway outage that we're looking at?
Okay, so this is a real world example. This is from one of our customers, and this happened in fact, just prior to Christmas last year, so it's very recent data. And it's a good example of looking at the sort of information that's contained in platforms. Some platforms will have this information, others won't. But it's a good example of what the data actually looks like. And what we can see there, this may be a little small on your screens, but the bottom left relates to media gateway outage. And every time you see a vertical red line there, we've had what's called a link bounce. So a media gateway has said, I can't talk to the server. It's struggled. This is business impacting, so calls aren't being processed. It can create quite a bit of havoc. If we relate that to the graph above, I mean, every time we see a green line on that graph above that hits the top of the chart, hits 100%, that's showing network packet loss between those two devices. So every time we see the pattern there, every time we get 100% packet loss on the network, we're getting link bounce on the media gateway. So this is looking pretty much like a network problem in this example. And then when we go across to the right, and this information is typically very deep within logs, so I've gone through there and pulled that out and highlighted it. But in behind there is a trace route, which will show you, when there is 100% packet loss, exactly where that's occurring on the network. So typically between two routers. So this is an example of data. So that data is there, and if you've got the right tools, you can pick it up. But without some pretty skilled engineering resource and some capability there, it's pretty hard to actually use that. And this is where on that circle of death, typically voice teams don't have access to this or they don't understand it, and they go to the network guys haven't seen the problem at this level, at these layers. Their panels are all showing everything's okay. So as far as anyone's concerned, there was an outage, but no one really knows why, and you can't get to the root cause.
You made a comment earlier, the term data to knowledge. Would you show us how that becomes important in this gateway problem?
Yeah, exactly. So this is staying with that one example. This is the sort of thing you get. You might get some sort of event correlation or log entries that say you have these problems around about the same time. Again, it kind of takes some capability and some skills to put that together. If we're taking that data and using our AI engine to turn that into knowledge, then we get the almost a human-like presentation of that data. It's certainly far easier for people to consume. If you take that information, your AI turns it into the explanation. So in this case, Media Gateway 28's experienced a brief outage due to an incident on the network between two routers. The incident's now been resolved, because the routers were bouncing there. The network's now been resolved, but would you like to know more? That's the sort of thing as a manager and even an engineer, that's the sort of information you want to know rather than having to troll through logs to get that. So that's what we're talking about, turning data into knowledge.
Let's apply the same idea, the data to knowledge idea, to voice quality.
And this is exactly, this is, wouldn't you far rather see this than just a report from end users that you got voice quality? In fact, wouldn't you far rather see this proactively? So before there's even a ticket logged on your service desk, before it's even reported through from your end users, and bear in mind, some end users won't tell you about problems. They'll sit there and fester about them and not be happy behind the scenes. So we don't even have to rely on them telling us that there's a problem before we kick into action. So yeah, artificial intelligence engines working in the background notice that there's a problem with voice quality, and then digs into all of that data that's coming in, that's streaming in from the customer, all of those logs, and pulls out the answer. So your AI engine there, your digital employee, comes back and says, users in IP network region 11, which is Wellington, are experiencing poor voice quality due to incorrect DSCP settings. Would you like to know more? In that case, you can click on that and get some more information about what you actually have to do to remedy that problem.
The next term, Unified Communications Health, is sort of broad. What do you mean by it?
Well, what service management will give you, it'll give you the health of your network. So stepping back a layer, getting away from that data and sort of analysing the knowledge. It'll give you both real-time and historic views of that. So in real time, you're being told proactively that there's, in those examples, there's voice quality problems, or there's an issue on the network between two routers. You're being told that, so you're not having to sit back and wait for people to complain. In those two examples, but there's really value for both the end user. So if you're a consumer, you're the customer providing services out to your customers. There's benefits for you there. You get superior customer engagement. Things work better. There's better quality, and of course, customer experience is everything. It's your main differentiator in the marketplace now. So there's value there for the end customer. There's also value for the MSP, for the managed service provider. So if you're supporting that customer, if you're a business partner, say an Avaya business partner, Cisco business partner, ITIL business partner, and you're supporting that end client, you can use service management to improve your business. So you can be different when you're out there pitching against other business partners to support those customers. Can help you to extend existing contracts, continue to show value, and be very close to that to your customer base from a service point of view, and provide them really with the outcomes that they're ultimately after.
You use the word value. I like to use the word benefits. All right. What are the real-world business benefits for managing UC properly?
What we've got here is this is a Another real world example. This happened in the last little while. So the two sides we've got there. The managed service provider on the left-hand side, the MSP was new to Versailles. And in fact, this is their first customer. They were able to go out there and win a pretty sizable support contract for a global customer. It was worth around £800,000 per annum to them. And it absolutely transformed their business. So they went from being a small reactive MSP, I guess, to a really professionally delivered MSP that was able to target much larger customers and provide much more value. And in fact, VSM is now core to their business, and they've got their top 20 clients running the full suite of services, and they're in the throes right now of converting the rest of their base from just an availability management and remote access point of view across to VSM. So very good for their business, and of course, if they win, we win. And on the other side of that equation, the end user customer, pretty sizable. They're in 50 countries. They're in 6 continents. The only place on Earth that they're not is Antarctica, so they're everywhere. For them, they saw not only a cost reduction because of all of the automation. There's significant cost reduction for both the MSP providing them service, but also themselves internally. So it saved them a lot of money in providing service management, but also it improved that quality. So when that contract was in fact picked up, there were over 200 pretty major problems, ranging right from, I believe there was 7 pieces of faulty hardware that hadn't been identified, through to configuration problems, release problems that were all identified and smoothed out. And the end result for them was, was a much better customer experience. They're also, for the first time, able to see where all their assets were globally, where they're physically located, all of the serial numbers, MAC addresses, or, all of that stuff of all of their assets. Finally, they knew where everything was and were able to track it from a financial point of view as well. So there was lots of wins on both sides of that equation.
Versailles Service Management, its VSM, has multiple elements. Would you provide some information on each of these?
ITIL really starts at Configuration Manager, so that's at about 4 o'clock, if we look at that as a clock. Configuration Management down there. So the first thing VSM does, and that falls in line nicely with the way ITIL works as well, is it will automatically identify all of your UC assets when it's deployed. So within 24 hours, you'll know exactly where everything is, how it fits together, what all the dependencies are between the various applications and various components. So there's no need to manually put together a dependency map. That's done automatically for you, and as the applications change and the various components or configuration items move around, or the configuration changes of those, we track that in real time, so we know exactly all of that, and that's under configuration management, and that's at the heart of ITIL. So if you're not doing configuration management, you're not doing ITIL really. So that's at the heart of it. Capacity Manager steps in. So all of those configuration items, we've found all of those assets. If they have a consumption report, if they're able to report on consumption, so things like how many licenses are used, but we'll sample those licenses. We'll look at how many you've purchased and how many you're using. We'll do that every 6 minutes. So you get a very granular view of your license consumption. And then moving around that clock again a bit further into Availability Manager, we look not only in there that all of the logs, all of your syslog, event log, error logs, alarm logs, everything goes into there. All of your RTCP, so your voice quality information. We look at that from an ITIL perspective, which is the end user view. So what's the end user getting? The end user may be a contact center agent or a UC user. Do they have clear speech? Is it working in both directions? Right through to, is the treatment for inbound callers into the contact center, is that treatment working correctly? Service desk is just our point of administration, gives you access into dashboards and so forth, so you can see all this data streaming in real time and what it means. So if you want to run a big screen, you can do that, or you can have it on your on a small screen as well. But you can see the data as it comes in real time and how things interrelate. Security Manager, we added relatively recently in there. So security management's becoming more and more relevant to voice operations, particularly in the SIP world, where your organisation's essentially exposing yourself even more to the internet, and and the potential problems that presents with bad guys out there. So we watch everything from a security management point of view too. So we look for malicious activity and can alert in real time when something suspicious is going on. Change Manager is where we keep all of the changes in changelog, and we also provide a change calendar there. So between the MSP and the customer, they can share information about scheduled changes, and we create, in ITIL terms, a permanent artifact. So all of the details of the change, whether it was successful or failed or so forth, that's all retained there, and the paperwork behind all of that. Release Manager, this is a thing that's just obviously a very time-consuming task. The manufacturers are always continually pushing out new releases. They're pushing out information about the compatibility between releases, so it can become quite complex. And then finally, Continuity Manager. So Continuity Manager in an ITIL world, that really just steps in when everything else has failed. Your redundant applications or whatever have failed. You've had a major data center outage and you need to rebuild. So that's where we keep all of the information that's necessary to rebuild your environment. So offsite backups, copies of your configuration, copies of what your hardware was, right down to firmware releases and so forth. So you can rebuild a facsimile of what you had, should you need to.
When I look at your product and the service that you're offering, it's got a lot of elements to it. And I'd like to point out to the viewers today, there are a number of resources at Versailles.com, and the resources are on the right-hand side. Versailles is a worldwide company. You want to talk to them. They have America's offices in the UK and Europe and Asia Pacific, and these are the contacts that you could use for those. I'd like to thank you, Ross, for today's EDUcast, and I look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Gary. It was a pleasure. It's good talking to you.